Welcome to another explainer. Look, if you're someone who loves to learn efficiently but absolutely hates the fluff, you are exactly in the right place today. We're looking at a fascinating paradox, something literally every creative, every meticulous planner, and every spontaneous soul has wrestled with at some point. We're talking about finding focus when things, well, when they absolutely do not go according to plan. Our source material today is this wonderfully insightful piece by a photographer named Ang, taken straight from their Notes on Photography series. It's a brilliant, quick reflection on an adventure that started with one simple goal, completely derailed, and ended up teaching a literal masterclass in preparation. So let's jump right in and see what we can learn.
But first, have you ever ruined a great photo op or maybe even a great learning opportunity just because you were a little too spontaneous? I really want you to think about it for a second. You know the feeling. You're wandering around, you stumble upon something visually amazing, you're snapping away, and only later, when you get home, do you realize you completely missed the magic. Why? Because you had absolutely no idea what you were looking at. That spontaneous freedom is exhilarating, sure, but it has a massive blind spot. You often miss the essential, historical details. And honestly, that is exactly the trap our photographer Ang fell right into. Section 1. An unplanned garden visit. Okay, let's dive into this. Because to truly master the unplanned, we need to look at how an unplanned event actually unfolds. And, it usually starts with something incredibly mundane. Ang's day started with a perfectly planned, straightforward agenda, visiting a local plant fair. Nothing crazy there, right? But as it so often happens when we're out exploring the world, a detour presented itself. Suddenly, the whole script is flipped. Ang isn't looking at rows of potted ferns anymore. They've wandered completely off the path and into a classical Chinese garden. It's a beautiful, thrilling surprise. The artistic instinct instantly kicks in. But there's a massive catch here. Ang is suddenly surrounded by unfamiliar architecture, an entirely different cultural context, and has absolutely zero preparation on how to actually capture it. Section 2. 6 Elements of Lingnan.
Let's see how this builds. Because Ang didn't just walk into any random garden. Ang had stumbled upon the Lingnan-style. This is a classical Chinese gardening style inspired specifically by the Guangdong region. Now, in the original source, Ang notes this isn't necessarily their preferred gardening style, but man, it presented an incredible, unexpected opportunity. It offered a rare glimpse into classical Chinese gardening without actually needing to book a flight all the way to China or Guangdong. It's a localized, authentic slice of history right in front of the lens. But here's the trick. To effectively capture it, you have to know what makes the style unique. You really have to know its visual vocabulary.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the Lingnan style isn't random at all. It intentionally incorporates 6 major elements: mountain, water, stone, buildings, calligraphy, and plants. Think about it. If you know these 6 pillars beforehand, you suddenly have a powerful roadmap for your photography. You aren't just shooting random trees and rocks anymore. You're actively looking for how these specific elements interact and balance each other out to create that signature aesthetic. It gives you immediate focus. But remember, Ang didn't have this checklist ready. They didn't know these elements. They were just winging it, totally soaking in the spontaneity. Section 3. The downpour disaster. So the brutal truth about winging it is that you are entirely at the mercy of your environment. Just as Ang is exploring this visually rich, unexpected location, the weather drastically turns. Out of nowhere, a heavy downpour hits. Because this trip was completely unplanned, Ang was caught completely off guard. I mean, when you're on a meticulously planned shoot, you might check the radar, pack some weather gear, or at the absolute least, you know exactly which priority shots to grab before the storm hits. But when you're just wandering blindly, panic sets in. The shoot is effectively ruined by the rain, and Ang is forced to retreat, suddenly realizing they missed some absolutely critical shots simply because they didn't know what to prioritize. 200. I want you to really focus on that number for a second. It's not just a random statistic. That represents the age in years of the majestic Qilin statues guarding the entrance to this garden. 2 centuries old. Because Ang didn't know the history of the garden beforehand, they had no idea these historic statues were a foundational cornerstone of the site. The rain washed out the shoot before Ang even realized what they had casually just walked right past. Those were the exact critical shots missed, entirely due to a lack of contextual knowledge. Ang puts it perfectly, and honestly, quite humbly, in this quote from the source material. Quote, "Missed some critical shots that showcase the garden." You can truly feel the artistic regret in those words, can't you? The weather was the catalyst, sure.
But the real underlying culprit was the lack of preparation. When that time window suddenly shrank from a leisurely afternoon to just a few frantic minutes before torrential downpour, Aang didn't know what the most important subjects were. The sudden weather and the blind spontaneity basically compounded into a major missed artistic opportunity.
Section 4. Lessons in Unplanned Photography.
The beauty of this explainer, and of Aang's original notes, isn't about wallowing in missed shots or bad weather. It's about what we logically extract from those moments of failure to transform a literal disaster into a highly practical framework. And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy Aang arrived at. On one hand, being unplanned and unprepared leads directly to missing key historical elements, like those 200-year-old entrance statues. You're effectively shooting blind. But on the other hand, being unplanned but researched changes everything. Even if the visit itself is completely spontaneous, just taking 5 minutes on your phone in the parking lot to establish a baseline understanding allows you to immediately start framing your shots using those 6 core elements we talked about. You gain instant, actionable artistic focus straight out of total chaos.
So, the crucial point is this highly effective 3-step framework that Aang walked away with. Step 1. Do an initial study on unfamiliar structures. Don't just look at them, try to quickly identify what style they actually belong to. Step 2. Learn the history and background of the place. Find out what truly matters before you even press the shutter. And step 3. Approach your shots by deliberately focusing on those core elements. Think about it. If Aang had done this, even with the impending rain, they would have known to sprint to those statues first, or to specifically frame a shot combining the water and stone elements of the Lingnan style before the sky opened up. Ultimately, knowledge dictates priority. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from Aang's experience today. Will you do your homework before your next spontaneous adventure? I know. It sounds like a complete paradox, doesn't it? Planning your spontaneity. But as this story perfectly demonstrates, a tiny bit of rapid research doesn't kill the magic of wandering at all. It actually equips you to capture it properly. So next time you take an unexpected detour, take a breath, do a quick search on your phone, find your focus, and give your creativity the structure it truly deserves. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you on the next one.